Hey howdy, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to be talking about sleeving a ZB30J barrel using an MG13 barrel. But I do want to start off by saying that if this is the type of content you enjoy, consider becoming a customer over at the website today. Obviously the funds from that help fund things like this, showing people how stuff like this is able to be done. So it means a lot, check it out, see if there's something there that you like. But anyways, on to the important part. The ZB30J. So the 30J is a Yugoslavian contract of the Czech-made ZB30, ZB26, whatever you want to call it. This is basically the granddaddy to the Bren series. So the ZB30 is a very, very well-made, intricately machined firearm. There's so many very interesting cuts, machining marks and things like that that's put into each and every single one of these, and to an extent they're actually even hand fitted when it comes to the barrels and this, which I'll get into in a second here. But in the United States, the ZB30J has been coming into the United States recently, over the past 2-3 years, in the form of parts kits, and they're one of the more interesting of the light machine gun parts kits in the fact that barrels for them are literally unobtainium. So the ZB30, the original Czech ZB30, had a straight off the tap gas system. There was no adjustment in it whatsoever, which meant that the gas port for the barrel was up literally at the muzzle. Right now, the 30J, when the Yugoslavs were figuring out how they wanted their light machine gun to be made, Yugoslavia had a boatload of different types of 8mm ammunition, so they wanted something that was infinitely adjustable gas system. So what the Czechs did in order to accommodate that was they moved the gas block back, and they put this collar on here with, I believe it's 7 or 8 different gas settings, and in the process shorten the entire gas tube and shorten the piston on the carrier. So the problem with that is that original Czech 30 barrels and reproduction Czech 30 barrels don't fit without an extreme amount of modification. And the other thing too, this is mostly an aesthetic thing, the original 30 barrels have these fins all the way down, right? Whereas the 30J barrel, this is what makes it the most distinctive out of all of them. You can spot it in a pile of barrels from a mile away. Is that about the last 10 inches of it is knurled right here, right where the carry handle is. You can spot that from a mile away. So knowing that the 30J barrels are basically unobtainium, and the ones that are in the United States are highly sought after items that go for thousands of dollars, I decided to sleeve one. So bring you in here, take you a few close-ups and show you how it's done. Okay, so first things first, this is that adjustable gas block I was talking about. It's actually set at setting 0 right now. But you can see that the gas block has been moved back along with the front sight. And there's this key right here which helps hold this collar into place. And when it's fully assembled, the flash hider also sits on that key right there. And I've got a spare right here to actually show you. These are the different gas settings right here. So you've got closed basically all the way up to wide open, right? So again, Yugoslavia specifically wanted that because they had so much different 8mm ammo floating around, right? Now moving on down a little bit, you can see right here is the end of the cooling fins and then the beginning of the knurling. So on the legitimate Czech ZB30 barrels, ZB26 barrels, whichever model you got, and I believe even the ZB39, I don't know, I have to double check on that one. This is finned all the way down, right? However, on the Yugoslavian version, I don't know exactly why, and I haven't been able to find a definitive answer, but from here on down is knurled. I can only assume that this is to help give you better purchase and grip when you're changing barrels out, because these were originally issued with 2 barrels, and they're numbered specifically to the gun, and for good reason. But again, in a minute. But I can only assume that these are to help give you better grip when you're changing these barrels, especially after they get fouled, because this is an open bolt light machine gun. You got a lot of ammo going through, a lot of fouling, a lot of corrosion, stuff like that after a while if you don't clean it. So I don't know, but that's my best guess. And then moving on to the very end right here, you've got your barrel lock. So if you're familiar at all with the ZB series, the barrels on here, or even the Brens, I should say, because a lot more people are familiar with Brens. These have basically an interrupted thread, a three-land interrupted thread that ties into this nut right here, this barrel nut. And then this latches into the receiver itself, and this is what retains your barrel into the receiver. All right, so this is a prime example of why this gun was so expensive to be built in the first place, is because these are hand fitted right here. So if you'll notice that this latch is numbered specifically, it's not numbered to this gun, but this is numbered specifically, and then this was also supposed to be numbered to the receiver and the two barrels. You'll have barrel, say 1121 and then 1122. It's because they're hand fitted to each one of these receivers. Let me show you why. Okay, so this is a demilled end of a different barrel, and you can actually see this one is number 272 barrel A, and it's actually been refitted from gun ending in 901. And you can see the turning marks right there where that was done. So this three-land interrupted thread, this is pretty interesting because it's originally cut as a square thread, and then it's been the machine was repitched at a different angle to come back and cut these as almost a wedge. So these are larger up front on this side, and then they're smaller back here. And then obviously a horizontal mill came by and interrupted them right there, right? So the way that these are headspace is pretty interesting, but it's also extremely time consuming, and I can understand why they stopped doing this. Here's your barrel nut, and you'll notice that in the middle of the barrel nut there is this. It looks almost like a key, and this is a separate piece that can actually be knocked out of here. This is what controls the time of your barrel nut. So you can see that this one, it wasn't all the way in there. Maybe it was. There we go. So this controls the time of your barrel nut right here, this piece. So depending on how the inside of this is cut, determines how far it moves down that interrupted thread, right? So you can see on the barrel that I just got done with, we put it on there. It times almost perfectly at 90 degrees, right? It's probably more like 88 or 89. So once that's timed, once you get your thread engagement correct, and then you go to fit it onto your actual receiver. So you go to stick this on there, and then there's your groove right there, which latches in, or it guides into this spot on your receiver. Boom, just like that. Put this nut on here, and when this is fully down and compressed, that is supposed to be your headspace, right? So the headspace is actually taken off of the distance between the shoulder on the barrel right here and this ring on the receiver right here. So in order to re-headspace a gun, you would have to not only cut this shoulder, but you would also have to recut this key in your nut in order to set the timing right again. Very interesting, also very expensive and very time consuming. So I don't blame them for getting rid of that process eventually. But for us, while we're rebuilding them in a non-wartime setting, it's pretty interesting to see, and it's actually it gives you a great insight as to how things were done back in the day. So you can see my kit was non-matching, my barrel was non-matching, and my nut was non-matching. So I had to basically redo each one of those surfaces in order to make this happen. So I had to recut this top thread right here. I had to mess with this key, and I also had to recut the shoulder on the barrel, right? So enough about how it works, let's see the barrel, right? If you've been following along with this project long enough, you know that there was already one attempt made to line this barrel. Now, the original liner that I had planned was a turned down Mauser M24-47 barrel. Now, the problem that I had with that was that I had made the bores on both halves of this original barrel too tight. And my interference fit was way too tight. And basically it made it, you know, just about halfway and then stopped dead in its tracks. So what I ended up having to do was obviously, you know, pull it back out, drill out the rest of the way where it got froze, and then start from square one again. So the new liner is actually made out of an MG13 barrel. Now, the MG13 barrel is pretty nifty because there is a whole hell of a lot more barrels in the United States than there are kits, which means, and even built guns, honestly, which means that the barrels are still relatively inexpensive. I believe I picked these two up from Apex Gun, or I picked two of them up from Apex Gun Parts for like 50 bucks. So another great benefit is that they have a bunch of meat back here to work with and to turn down on, and they're longer than the original 30J barrel to begin with. So the way that this liner went was this was turned down to $597 for basically the entire length, and then 2.85 of the chamber end was turned to 700 thou. So then a corresponding bore was made back here. Fits perfect, right? So the next step is to use Loctite 660. Loctite 660 is a purpose-made compound that's meant to build up worn shafts, worn keyways, things like that. It's called quick metal. And this is the type of application where it shines. You can also use the 638 Loctite compound. They're all retaining compounds. They're meant to do this type of thing. Or if you're feeling really cheap, you could probably just get away with using JB Weld. And then after that's cured, the seam right here is going to get welded. I don't know if you can even see the seam at this rate, which is good. And then the final, what is it, like 2.5 inches of the liner actually needs to be cut off, like right there, in order to have the original flash hider fit on it. And then the final chambering needs to be done. Now, luckily enough, I took the original chamber measurement, the original head spacing measurement, before I bored out the barrel, which was 110 thou off chamber face, or off breech face, right, to the case head. Now, if you're anything like me and you have to get all of the weird accessories for all of your weird builds, you'll notice that this is a ZB30 gunner's tool. This is one half of the gunner's equipment. And wouldn't you know it, on this tool, there is a headspace gauge, and this measures out at exactly 110 thousandths. So this is what I'm going to be using to check headspace. So, thanks for following along. Now that the hard part is done, now it's time to weld this thing back up, get it converted to semi-auto, and take it to the range. So, thanks for watching. Happy building, guys.